Welcome to the third demonstration celebrating the Pastel Society of America's 51st Exhibition Enduring Brilliance. Today we welcome Steph Mouw. Steph began her art training in a 2-year vocational commercial art program in high school. She went on to study at the Cleveland Institute of Art, where she received a solid foundation in drawing, painting, and design. She works predominantly in soft pastel from direct observation to create compelling still life paintings. Steph is a signature Master Pastelist member of the Pastel Society of America. She's a juried member of New York City's Salma Club, where she serves on the art committee. She's also a signature member of the Connecticut Pastel Society and an associate member of the American Impressionist Society. Her paintings have been juried into many national and international shows and have received numerous awards, including the Terry Ludwig's Pastel Award at the 2022 Pastel Society of America's 50th Annual Exhibition. And she's also received the Medal of Honor for Pastel at the Catherine Lorillard Wolfe Art Club's 122nd Annual Open Juried Exhibition. Steph's work has been exhibited at the National Arts Club, the Salma Club, and the Butler Institute of American Art. In June of 2020, the Pastel Journal did a feature article on her floral paintings. Steph, her husband Bruce, and their cat Charlie live on the North Shore of Long Island, New York. Please let's welcome Steph Mouw.
Hi everybody, welcome to my studio. I'm here today to demonstrate a pastel floral still life painting, and I want to talk a little bit about my inspiration and about my materials. So I start with flowers, not just any flowers, usually flowers that are gifted to me. Sometimes my husband will come home with a small bouquet. In this case, JR's garden. My dear friends, the JRs, have a beautiful garden, and they've lovingly grown and picked these flowers for me for my painting. It kind of starts a heart connection or an emotional connection between myself and my subject. My way of giving back is to use that inspiration to create a painting. I take the flowers, I put them usually in a clear glass vessel and add water. I place that in my shadow box, which you can see over here. And the idea of the shadow box is to exclude the ambient light in the room. In any room, there's light bouncing all around. And I want to have just my single light source, which in this case is my gooseneck clamp-on lamp. And that way, having excluded the light bouncing around, I can better see my shadows, my cast shadows, and my form shadows. The form shadows are as the form turns away from the light, the value darkens, maybe the temperature or the color will change. So I can better see that using the shadow box and the light. And also the light creates a lot of drama, which I really like. I also like the idea of contrasting the organic, the tendrils, the leaves, the buds, with the man-made glass, the shiny, polished, reflective vessel. Interesting things happen when I combine light, glass, water, and flowers, especially inside the glass. I may get a stem may dislocate above and below the water line. There's often like a prism effect within the glass. Distortions, reflections, some beautiful colors happen. So that's always exciting to see. The paper that I'm working on is pastel matte. It's a smooth, kind of velvety surface, and I like a toned paper. And the pastels that I use, I have an assortment: Jack Richardson, Terry Ludwig, Sennelier, Unison, Rembrandts, New Pastels, Diane Townsend, quite an assortment. So I think we're all set to start, and come on along with me. We'll get the show on the road. So I'm all set up here. I have my pastel matte paper. This is a brown color, and I have 2 thumbnails and a color study. I like to do anywhere from 1 to 3 thumbnails. I'm working out my composition. I may try a format, landscape format or a portrait format. I may do a square. And I'm also looking for my values. I'm looking for 3 values: a light, a dark, and a middle. And once I have that designed, if it works on a small scale like that, it's much more likely to work in my painting. I have a color study, so that way I've got my colors picked out. I have a plan. I know where I'm going with it. I've also created a margin. I marked off an 8x10 rectangle, and that way if I want to try some colors in the margin, I have a place to do that. I like to start with a piece of vine charcoal. I'm going to do my drawing as accurately as I can, taking time to measure and really think about placement on the page and getting things right before I start. I think of the drawing as the foundation or the scaffolding on which I'm going to build my painting. So let's get started. I've got my brown pastel mat, and I've got a color study and 2 thumbnails. And I like to do, I almost always do the thumbnails before I start. I work out my composition, and here I've worked out some of my colors. So I have a plan. I know where I'm going. We're gonna get started. So I'm starting with some vine charcoal, and I like to sketch out my drawing. I think of the drawing as the foundation for what I'm doing, kind of the scaffolding that I'm going to build my painting on. And we're going to put it over here. So I'm going to get my top and my bottom of my still life, and I've got it about there for my top, and that's really going to be that top leaf over there. And I'm going to get my side edge. I'm going to put it here, and that's the hydrangea on the right, and then the furthest little leaf out to the side. And before I do that now, I like to do a little bit of measuring. I'm going to measure my height to width. So I'm here. I make sure that I have, let's see, I'm going to use my straight edge. So something straight. I have a knitting needle, and I want to make sure that I hold my arm completely out straight. And let's get, I'm going to close one eye. So I've got my width. And what I'm looking at is square. So that's what I'm gonna put it down. So if I go up this high, then I'm all the way over there with the leaf. So I'm gonna go a little, I'm gonna bring it down here. So that'll be my top over there, and we'll have the bottom right about here. I'm bringing it in a little bit. Measure there, and I don't want to have equal space on all sides. So here I'm starting to risk having equal on top and bottom, and if I put it over here, I've got equal space. So I'm going to move this over just a little bit. I don't want the hydrangea to be all the way off my page. I've marked out an 8x10 area, so we're gonna move it over slightly to there. I'm gonna go back to my. So I think about where I'm placing it on the page. I like that better. I'm going to put a mark right there. Okay, so then, and I'm also going to get my half. So I have an idea of where things are on the page. And sometimes I get real lucky and my half is right at the lip of my vase. So that's good. Doesn't always work that way. So that's super nice. Let's see. I'm going to go halves here, a little less here and here. So my half is right about there. And I like to mark that off at the edge of my page here, here, and then my bottom, I know, and my top will be right about there. Okay, so my knitting needle has done its work. I may also sometimes, well, I can use the vine charcoal for this, but I like to see the angle of things. And you know, you can think of it on a clock. Is it 2 o'clock? Is it 1:30? But it helps me to have a straight edge and to, I think of it, I call it shooting angles. Okay, so I've got my half, my vase, and where am I going to put? And I've worked out here, I want it a little over to the right, not quite as much as that, maybe a little more like that. I'm going to put it, and I want to make sure that my verticals are vertical with the sides of the page. There are times when I come out, the painting's all done, and I realize, sometimes too late in that case, that I'm a little wonky, or my horizon line kind of dips one way or another. So this is a really good time and place to make sure that everything's right. And I'm also gonna see what the width of my vase is relative to the height of my vase. It's about 1.5. So here. And 1.5. So it's maybe about like that. I'm going to come straight down over here, comes in a little bit here. This comes straight, angles in. I think and we are going to do the top of the vase. We've got sort of a lip of the vase. At this point where I'm looking, I'm looking slightly down on it. So we're going to have a little bit of an ellipse coming down this way where I would be able to see just a teeny little bit of the top there. Got a little leaf there. I'm going to come in there. Okay. And we also have, so it's kind of a square jar, and it's got an angle going this way. It has kind of a side right there, and then it has an angle going up this way. I want to think about that when I'm doing my drawing. And it'll come in a little bit there, a little bit going on over here. And then I'm going to see what the angle of my shadow is. And it looks from here about a 10 o'clock angle. And I left a little room down here. There's always some nice reflections happening, and I like that. So I left some room here. Again, this is my top, and those flowers are right about there. They're actually cherry leaves that we have. And that over there. So now I'm going to also add in my shadow. And I'm going to bring my shadow, go this way. I'm going to put my horizon line in, which isn't to the halfway mark. It's just slightly below the halfway mark. Sometimes the picture that you're seeing might not be the exact angle that I'm seeing. It'll be close, so you might see it slightly different. All right, so we're going to take that to there, and take this straight up here. Now, and I'm just going to sketch some of these. And we've got a water line. The water line is above my horizon line. And it comes down here and then up this way. Here's my water line. We've got some little stems happening in there, some nice little stems happening in here, over there, little leaf, more little things going on in here. We got some green leaves sort of caught inside there. All right, so I have verbena is the white, and those are going to come up just outside of the edge of the vase. Come up like that. A point maybe about here. We're going to go. And then let's see how far down this hydrangea comes. It hits right about here. And I like my drawing. I'm going to get it as accurate as I can at this point. We've got the shadow side of the hydrangea. So my light source is coming from here, going this way. And I always want to keep that in mind. Where's my light source? So I've got, I'm going to see the form shadow up over here. That's about there. We have a little bud coming out over here. Little rosebud. And then the rose is right about here. That red rose. A nice shape. Kind of triangular. Another little bud happening over here. And then one below it. pretty foreshortened over here, coming down into the verbena. It's coming kind of at that angle. Got some more verbena in the back. I'm just mapping out what I'm seeing. And the verbena comes maybe to about here. And these florals were picked yesterday, so they're still fairly fresh. The JRs have a lovely garden, and we went walking in the back of the garden. It was a beautiful day. They have a butterfly bush, or a buddleia, and there were butterflies, which was great. Okay, so now I'm coming up here, that coming in this way. I'm going to put in those cherry leaves, which are going to be mostly in shadow, but they have some really interesting highlights. So this comes here. We're going to put this one right here. And things may move around a little bit. The more familiar, and the reason that I do the color study and the thumbnails, I want to get as familiar with my subject as possible. The more I draw it, I'm a big advocate of drawing, and the better my painting will be. So that little rosebud is right about here. It's a really nice little red. Right there, there's something coming over here. And then we have a dusty miller leaf, which I really like. They're interesting color and texture. They're velvety. Looks pretty straight across, slightly up this way. So I'm shooting angles here. How far over it comes, the dusty miller leaf is going to come over to the edge of my vase. So I line things up, you know, what verticals, where does it line up on my vase? Where does it line up, you know, when I'm looking at horizontally, what does something match up, or what's the angle? The angle of my hydrangea to that cherry leaf that's out on the edge, and it's going to go no further than here. And at what point is it the furthest out? Right in the middle of my hydrangea. So that's the tip of that leaf. So things are starting to come together. And I like spending time with the drawing, getting it right. Even though I'm going to go over it later with pastel, I've got my scaffolding underneath. A little leaf over here. It's got a nice little point. It's got a little flicker of light over there. So this shadow has some interesting light happening in it, which I'll get to when it gets darker over here. There's a reflection on the floor surface. This leaf over here, down this way with it, and it comes almost to the water line, but not quite, so maybe right about there. And it's pretty vertical coming up here, and then this opens up there. Another leaf is coming off of the hydrangea over here, and it's half of it is in shadow, so that half back there is shadow, and I've got that stem coming this way, the verbena. Just the verbena over here. It has an opening in it where you can kind of see through into the little verbena stems over there. And I'm going to put my pink rose in. And at how high is the rose? What is it? It's not as high as my red rose, the pink one. And at what angle does it start? So it kind of starts at this angle here. There's my dusty miller leaf with the shadow on it, and the rose lines up maybe a little more than the midline. So my rose is going to start somewhere in here, and it goes at kind of this angle, about here, come down, and out this way. Kind of complicated in there. I think the roses, I was told these were the last of the pink roses in the garden, and this one is starting to show it. This one still looks nice, the bottom one, but I got the last of the pink roses. I appreciate that. I'm going to bring this way, and how far out beyond my vase? It's a little ways out there. So we're going to do this, bring it in right about here, and then it goes this way. Coming across, so just getting the drawing. It looks like a little bit of a jumble just now. It will come together, and I still, I'm doing a lot of straight angles, but I also want to think about the gesture of things, and at this point I'm looking at it, and I think I want to get a little more gestural. So I'm going to just loosen up a little bit. Yeah. A little something happening behind the red rose. Now my shadow, it comes, so it's coming on an angle about like this, my shadow, and it comes up high. Let's see how high it comes up. The total shadow is there, and it comes up a little higher than my waterline. Just about like that is my total shadow, and the highest point is going to be just over the glass, right about there. So we're going this way with it, here, this way. And then we have a little piece sticking out over here. Maybe I'll back it off over there. And then about here, we've got some little things happening. There's a kind of a connecting bridge of the shadow here. And that's another thing. I want to try to connect my shadow shapes. That's going to go up here. That little point is right about there. A little, that's probably one of the rosebuds. And it's a great shadow. It's got little stems coming off of it. Those little leaves on the rosebud. Come up here. This way. Over. Comes up. It's kind of mushroomy. It's a little awkward of a shadow shape. I don't want to put something in there that looks like a mushroom, but I'll probably end up fading that out a little bit. So we're here. Let's see, we need to be a little bit higher than that. So we're going to come up and over this way. And then this way. All right. Better. My shadow on this side. We're going to take it and bring it in slightly here. I'm going to make sure my horizon line is going across and that my horizon line is level with the bottom edge of my paper. So do that. Okay. My cherry leaf. I have another leaf coming off of here. 2 leaves going that way. Coming here. This comes out a little. Looking better. Now, depending on, I move my head around a little bit. This is either on the inside of my shadow. I'm not sure what you guys are seeing because your view might be different. It's very close to being tangent with this shadow, which I don't want. I want it either inside the shadow or outside the shadow. So right now I've got it inside the shadow, and we'll keep it there for now. It looks like right about here the vase comes in. So that's just something for me to watch out for. I try to watch out for tangents where a leaf lines right up with my shadow. And so at that point, I'll change it. I'll either move my head a little bit or just move the leaf. I tend to be true to what I see. I'm looking. I'm not going to move a leaf. If I see it there, I'll put it there, but I might move my head a little bit or very slightly adjust it just so it's not tangent. I'm an advocate of painting as I see it. I don't paint from photographs. I paint from life. It's for me. It's about the process of what my brain has to do to turn something that's in 3-dimension into 2-dimension, and I believe the more we do that, the better we get at it, and also it helps me to learn to see differently. I come away from painting and I'm looking at the world differently, and I love that. So I think we're pretty good. The drawing's a little stiff. See if I can loosen things up a little bit as I go. Got a little bit of light there. A little part of that pink rose is back there. I mean, I could play with that forever, so I'm not going to. Let's move on. All right, so I have my pastels picked out, and now at this point, I'm going to get back from it because I like to every once in a while. Sorry for my head. Every once in a while, I like to get back from it and make sure I'm on the right track. Okay, so it looks pretty solid. I have to be careful of that horizon line going up on the left, but I think we're good. And let me squeeze back in over here. Okay, so I'm going to start with my shadow shapes. This might be too dark. Let's go with this. I think this is going to be the value. No, that's not what I want. Let's go with the darker one. We're going to start with shadow shape. So that's kind of dark for a shadow, but let's go with it. And so here I'm squinting. I want to see my shadows. I want to see everything that's in shadow. Over there. This is kind of in light shadow, but still in shadow. And we'll carve around that, but I'll likely come back in. I'll definitely come back in later. So I don't want to fill up the tooth of the paper. Pastel mat that I'm working on is great because it gives me a lot of leeway. It holds on to the pastel really well. And I'm squinting. I'm seeing kind of a shadow come across here. It holds on to the pastel well, and it takes a lot of layers, which I love. Here, I'm following the form. Still squinting. And I squint a lot when I paint. See pictures of me and I'm squinting away. Under here. And I'm going to use this for all my shadows today. Sometimes, so I do different underpaintings. I don't always do it the same. Sometimes I'll do the local color of what I'm seeing. I may do a darker kind of purpley in there. Sometimes I do a complementary color. Those are fun because then you've got the complement peeking through in the end, and it looks great. Today we're going to do an underpainting. I'm going to do one value with this, and we'll add some alcohol, a wash. And different papers, you can do different types of wash. Alcohol or water is usually what I use. Squinting again. So this is, those cherry leaves are pretty dark, and they're going to mostly blend into the background. At what point does that cherry leaf come in? I would say right about here. And then there's this one in here, here. More of that background coming in over here. Just following the form around. Little bits of light peeking out over there. And I like to leave margins around my page because that's where I'm going to test out some of my colors. Maybe just a little here. Good. And I'm going to go into some of these florals, and I'm squinting down. So there's a big shadow shape here. It's a light shadow. So I'm going to just delicately go over that. One comes through there, and underneath. And here's the squinting really helps a lot. It may not be great for one's eyesight, but I don't think it's hurt mine. It's definitely helped my painting, so I encourage squinting. And then this is all back in here in shadow, for the little bits of light along the back wall there. And got rose, a little bit of it here, and then we've got a shadow on that Dusty Miller with the wall behind, pretty solid in there, and it's coming down into here. Put that shadow in, a little darker behind it, a little darker there. Just right in there. Shadow here. Okay, it's coming along. A little bit of shadow happening here, and I'm just following the form. A little bit there, and this. Better. Solid shadow back there. Here, and then what's happening in this front row. So we've got here our buds here. We've got this red rose, and I'm just going to follow the shadow shape, and it comes in this way. Out. Another little bud right up in there. Shadows back behind there. Taking shape. Anything else? Let's see. We've got those green leaves. There's some shadows happening there. I'll just go over them a little bit here. There's a coming across this way, down here, waterline, a little bit of shadow in here, just a little bit of light on that leaf, and comes up to here, a little bud. No, it's not bud, it's the rose. Yeah, well, the bud of the rose. And let's see, we've got the leaf coming in over there. Carve out some of the verbena. I'm just going to carve a little bit of it out, and I'll do more with pastel later. All right, so let's go with that for an underpainting. I'm just going to do a little bit of. It's mostly light wall. There's a little dark here. There's a lot of dark here, and maybe a little darker across here. It's going to be, that was a little too dark, but I'm going to put it lighter over here. My light, again, the light is here, so just imagine it being right there, shining here, but it's not, so my light it's a small source, and so it's a little darker outside the light. One thing over here. This is going to come out here, and not great, but we can fix. Pastel is very forgiving, and that all can be fixed later. Okay, so let's pour some alcohol. Not to drink, mind you, just it's in a terpenoid bottle, but it's isopropyl alcohol. So I didn't put any of the lights in. It's not going to matter so much on this paper. It's the darks that I want to get rid of. Move this around. And I don't mind the drips. It's fine. Sometimes fun things happen with drips. And I just want to get kind of a solid background where the shadow shapes are. And even if it obscures some of my drawing, that's okay, because it'll give me the opportunity to go in and redraw, which will help me be even more familiar with it. That'll dry. Just giving me just a solid tone. In oil paint, I would tone the canvas beforehand. Here, this is a way for me to tone my canvas. And it also sets the pastel, so it's not going to flake off this part. And I've been told by a framer that it even helps the pastel to adhere on top with what's coming later. Whether she knows or not, I don't know that. but maybe. So it sounds good. Let's see. This is really more, a little more in shadow. But we just want to, okay, that looks good. We're going to set that aside. See if we can work into the drier parts. And we'll get going with putting some color down. Okay, so where to start? I'm going to start right in. Let's we'll start into my shadows. It's pretty purple. When I pick up a pastel, I want to think, is there somewhere else that I can put that? Let's see. Maybe just a little bit. This is going to end up being lighter. Still a little damp over there. Let that dry. Now, an interesting place to put it would be up here. We'll come back to that. And I'm going to put in my background up there. And one of the reasons why I chose a warm toned paper is that my background is going to be a little cool, and I like the idea of a warm possibly showing through on the cool background. At this point, I'm trying just to roll my pastel sort of into it, because I don't want a hard line on that shadow. This way. And this is pretty blue-green, but I'm going to go over it. So I can put any color, so long as it's in the right value, I can use any color and then work more colors on top. So long as my value is right, the color at this point, I can go over it. It doesn't matter so much just now. I don't blend with my fingers, but I might occasionally flick something that I don't like. And I still have some of that brown showing through. Now, at this point, with this dark shadow shape, now my paper's looking lighter than when I first pulled it out, and I thought, oh, that's kind of a dark background. It's not so dark at all. Here. The background gets a little darker out this way, and I can go over that. That leaf here, and it butts up into my vase. Right down here. And there's some of this. Now, the thing about painting glass is I am really painting what's behind the glass. It's going to be distorted, not including the stems and things that are in the glass, but where there's no stems or leaves, I'm painting what's behind it. So this horizon line actually dips down over here because of the distortions. I'm going to put some of that down in there. It comes up over here. I can come back to that later when I get more into the glass. It comes right up to my verbena. Put something in over here. We got little specks, which I can get to later. But little bits of light. Those are fun. There. Not loving this straight up, but I can fade it out. I can obscure it, and I do want like a softer line at the edge of my shadow. Let's see what we have here. We've got a little bit of this coming. It's actually above the horizon line. There's a big light area coming off of here. I'm going to have to be patient and come back to that. I'm going to go here, bring this in a little lip of my vase, cover up the charcoal there, bring it in over here, and it kind of shoots off this way. And I don't have to define everything. Some things can be left kind of indistinct, but let the viewer maybe surmise or intuit what's going on. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of this, just so once I have a color, I try to see where else can I put that. It'll help the unity of my painting. I'm going to just bring some of this into here. This will end up being a little lighter in here. And probably maybe a little lighter back in here. And some of this I can bring in there. Turn that form. Some of this verbena that's in shadow, we're going to just put a little bit in there. And the Dusty Miller, definitely, it's the shadow part of the Dusty Miller is right there. It's a nice raking shadow across, and it comes slightly off here. And I've got the rose, the pink rose coming right in there. We'll come back to that. Let's just take it up. Little points. Okay. A little bit of this back in here. More of that Dusty Miller back there. There's a little bit of light. I'm not sure that I'm going to put that little bit of light in. So I want to be careful. Something light will make it pop forward, and it's really way in the back. So when I do put that light in, it won't be a real light. It won't be as light as what's happening in the light over here. And there's some more of that Dusty Miller in the back. We're just going to indicate that there's something going on. Little leaves coming off of it. A little more solid shadow. Shadow coming in here. All right, so let's move on, and I'm going to go into that shadow a little bit. See what we have here. I'm going to carve that shadow out. I love shadows, and I kind of have to, I do have to rein myself in when it comes to the shadows. So, and I'll probably have to go over that with something maybe not as dark. But I get so excited about shadows. Here we've got little bits. I don't want it to be too disjointed, but I will go over it some more. And we've got this comes in over here. That's actually the leaf. That. My shadow isn't quite as dark over here, but I would say these this may be too dark, but we can come back. These cherry leaves, I'm going to go with something not quite. Let's use this. That's a little warmer for the cherry leaves. I like that better. All right, so let's see where they are. I've got my Dusty Miller in shadow here, and just above it is some of that cherry leaf, and it ends right there. I like this color for it. Comes out this way. Here, more of that cherry. One coming across here that isn't quite that value. This is the darker, and then a little bit of that leaf back behind there. This one here isn't as dark. It's a beautiful red. I'm going to go with, I'm going to put it in gently, and then I'm going to come back. This has this shadow. The leaf curves. This part of it goes this way, and we'll come back in with something red. A beautiful warm light in there. There's a little bit of this right there. Cherry leaf. Okay, so anywhere else I can use this? Maybe a little bit. Just warm up the shadow slightly. Rumble it in here as well. So behind, I have my hydrangea, and there's the leaf off the hydrangea, and there's a little bit of this right in there, which will look nice up against the green leaf. It's just a teeny bit, maybe comes in into the hydrangea. Okay, so we're going to set that down. I'm going to move on. I'm going to get some of my lights in. So let's go with, and I use all different pastels. I'm not, if it's the right color and the right value, except at the end when it comes to glass, I like super soft pastels for the highlights, but super hard ones for some of those different. So I tend to paint a little differently when I get to the glass. You'll see. We'll get there. I promise. So again, my light is coming right there. Let's see what else we have here. Some nice orangey things happening. All right. That over there, we've got a little dark behind it. Just kind of picking little things out. Making the form turn. All right, before I get too far with that, let's see where else I can put. And I see some of this in my pink roses. So we've got those right about here. And this way. One there, a little bit coming there. And it's a little purpley, but I think the value is probably good on this one. But just kind of moving it around where I'm seeing it. I'm still squinting. That, there, 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 here. Okay. And maybe a little bit back into the touch. Put in red rose. So the shadow part of the red rose is super red. Let's see, I've got a bud happening here and my red rose over there, over here. A little fleck of this super bright red right in there. More of that bud, and then this is going to be, there's a little bit of light, and we've got bud right in there. Where else can I put this? A little more solid there. This up. And I see this right across here in front of the Dusty Miller. I'm just gonna, probably too intense, but I can always bring it down. There's a little bit of it way in back, and again, I want to be careful about as really warm colors pop forward. So just indicating it back there. So we'll go with that. And let's do some greens. I haven't been testing my colors. That's not the green I want. Let's do more testing here. All right, so that's kind of a light green. That's a nice one. It's pretty green. We'll give it a try. So that's going to come here. And sort of connects there. This here. I'm going to put my green, I've got one green bud in over here and another one just next to it there. It's got a stem here. It comes up a little bit. I've got one right over here. And so the light side there, some other ones in shadow. This one here is light, and it's about here and coming down. Let's some of the dark green, pretty dark. This here and here, down there with it, and then I'm coming right in to my vase. Little dark green shadow in there. And over here, we'll put some of that. into the verbena. And there we've got a leaf kind of plastered to the wall just above my water line, right in there. I'm going to indicate it. I'm just going to indicate some of these. And then here I may lighten that a little bit because the verbena is pretty light in there. Got this one here. Coming off of it. Little. So we've got the Dusty Miller here, but back in there, there's some of this green. Here. And it comes out of my rose. There, and we've got a little leaf this way. A little bit of the green just above my water line. Some of those stems. I'm just going to indicate some of those stems. So it's kind of all over the place there. All right, we're going to move on. I'm going to put this is the Dusty Miller shadow color. Let's define it a little bit more. Coming out this way. Here. Comes behind the rose and then kind of down in there. All right. Oh, this is actually a little lighter than. Okay, so we're going to take this to the background here. So a little lighter with this background where it's shining, maybe. Bring this in down here. Going to be some of this later when we get to doing the glass. I like to save the glass for the end. It's kind of like dessert. That's good for now. I'm going to put a little this now this is back a little ways, so if I can bring some of that background into it, it's kind of atmospheric perspective a little bit. Same thing with some of these in back. Those little bits of light come in. It's a little lighter right in there. Okay, put that down. I'm gonna go for the verbena and the Dusty Miller, the highlight of the Dusty Miller, and those are pretty light. Let's see. Up here, sort of interesting shapes, little bits of leaf. Round. Falls off back in there. And then I'm going to, for now, use the same on the fronts of my verbena. You know what? I'm going to put more of the shadow in on the verbena before I do that. So let's just carve out some of this. that. It looks light, but we'll put, the green is more yellowy. It's going to be super light. But so is the verbena in front. Okay, so we're a little. It's almost clovery shape of it. I'm squinting again. It gets a little almost orangey over here. Well, it's still yellowy over there. In the middle there. Okay, and let's carve in behind it a little bit. With something a little darker. Still squinting down. And some of this here. And there's some nice shadows in there, just teeny little verbena. There. All right, so let's put this, put some of this in here. And we're going to go back in this dusty rose shadow and butt it right up against the light part. And then bring some of this shadow up in here. Down. Bring a little bit of it down there. Back to using the side edge. Okay, that's good. A little greener. I'll bring some of that into behind the verbena, and then I'm squinting down, so there's a little more of it through here. And let's see, a little over there. And I use this for some of the background. Let's bring a little bit of it in here. I'm gonna do some more in that shadow. So I kind of left that shadow. That's too light. Too light. That's better. Let's darken that shadow up over here just a little bit. I'm not going to darken it quite out to the edge. We're going to bring some of this in here. Come around some of these flowers. it's cooler. I'm not, we'll see. The jury's still out on that one. Let's get some of this in here. Got the leaves coming off of there. Broader strokes. Not loving it, but it may be. Let's put my horizon line in here. It may work for that. So sometimes it's a matter of trying things. Like it, don't like it. Put some of this dark in over here. I'm going to move it kind of this way. And we've got this dark back in here. A bit of this in here will be nice. Okay, so let's put in some of the lights of the roses. And a little more before we go into that. I'm going to use the same one here. Okay, so we've got rose coming here. Cups under there. And this way. This one coming down. Super light here. Comes up and over, and then shape this. Here. Up this way, and there's a little pointy part of it. Okay, so let's come back to that. And verbena, I'm going to make whiter, but we'll come back to it. So I need some of the light on the rose, sort of orangey. Here, goes this way and around. It comes out a little behind that bud, a little fleck up there. This use kind of close to what's happening. Let's put a little bit of this. I'm just picking out bits and pieces. All right. And I am going to get back from this because it needs to be tied together, and it's not sure that it is. So bear with me. We're just going to get back from it. I'm going to see what's going on. Okay. All right, I'm going to work some into the glass. And I'm squinting here, so let's put in, I've got something like a real pale green in here for those stems. I'm going to put these in over here. They come up to my water line right about there, and then they peek out. Bring them here. There's another stem. Comes up a little higher over there, and this one's going to come out there. I'm going on over here. And this one, there's little flecks of light and shadow. A few of them going over here. One coming out of the glass over here. or up against the glass, I should say, not out. All right, so we're just, again, we're just mapping it out. And I want to put in right, kind of butts up against. So this is the wall behind the glass. And there's a good bit of it. And then it comes up on this side of the stem and comes right about there and down. And fix that glass. Again, squinting. What am I seeing? Lots of colors, lots of shapes. There's a lot going on. And I'm going to go back and fix my glass. So this side is a little darker over here. It's still pretty gray. That's a little darker. Let's just come across that. It's not quite dark enough. And we've got comes up over here. Here. Just following some of these. It's pretty abstract inside the glass. So I just want to map it out a little bit. And a little rim. Another one up here. Get some more greens. We've got this is a little lighter green. I'm just going to bring this across. Little part of the stem, and it comes that way. Down, a little bit down there. More, all kinds of green stems happening right in there. Across. This is the one that's so cute. It's plastered up against the glass. Almost like, get me out of here. And this comes down over here. And I am going to go back in the edges of my glass, which I like to use new pastels. This is darker. So we've got this coming up this way, and then it comes under here. It's a little straighter on, and then it goes up this way. And it's coming. This is happening down a little bit. Yes. Right up the edge here. And I've got to put my background in there. And it kind of we have a sort of a lost edge right in there. Down this way with my water line. And then up slightly. Same thing. Some of these in over here. Little light bits happening in there. with down just a little bit. Like I said, it's sort of a lost edge right in there. And we're going to bring this in up over here. Here. A bit over there. This side's a little darker. Sort of greenish down there. Okay, now I want this really light stem here. We need something to make some interest, some excitement. Let me know that's glass. There. Got this one over here. Super nice stem that comes out over here. And then a little more of this happening behind that leaf. Waterline, maybe. And let's see, we've got other stem. It's coming down this way. Pretty soft pastel. See if we can get something a little harder. It makes straighter edges that way. Because this one is there. But I like, let's do some of this here. Ends up pretty dark underneath. And by putting something dark underneath it, it sits down. I find if I don't, they kind of look like they're floating. This is gonna right under my where it meets it. It gets pretty dark, and then I can also use this to reinforce my horizon line. There may be some of this dark, a little bit here, and then back up here. Okay, we're getting there. Now we need a little bit more light on this stem. Right at the water line. And in there. A little bit of light on it. I think we can maybe put a little of this in the back. There's something back there. I think it might be a geranium flower. Let's go into these roses. We need some super warm. Let's get, might be a little too light, but we need to warm them up. That's my orange. Let's try. Still about the same. red in there, and then I can go over it. That's a little better. And put some of this up in here as well. Rose is so nice. Some of those bits of light that are happening. And then I'm going to tone that down a little bit. Let's get some of this one. Be a little bluish. But put a little bit of that in here. Pick out some of the little petals. Just scumble this over it. And I'm going to go back into those lights. This. There. Maybe even a warm. What's that? Okay. I'm not loving what's happening in this shadow. Come back in with some of the pinks up in here. So this is super. This is really in the light. Here. Light happening in there. Squinting. What am I seeing? This piece right in here. And coming down from there is like really red. Beautiful. Comes through there. There's a little bit of red happening in there. And a lot of red right in there. Okay, so let's that. I'm going to tone it down in the lights here. Under here. And across. A little bit. Bits up in there. That, a little bit of light right in there. I don't want to do too much on that. There might be like a fleck of light right there. See where else we can use this. Cross with some of that. I want to open this guy up a little bit, make him a little larger. Still squinting down, just carving some of this out, making it a little more substantial. And maybe bringing some of this here, here. And this is pretty disjointed. See what we can do with the foreground. Pretty light right in here. Might be too light. Kind of a sandy color. Trying. This is a little more blue-green. That's not bad. A little, maybe intense chroma. I'm going to bring some of this into here. Definitely, I'm seeing that. Something lighter happening there. And it comes around here. And that'll help this pop out a little bit. Just putting the background, reinforcing my background. It'll pop my leaves out. Glass comes in over here. Leaf coming out over here. This little rim, and then go with little bits of the glass peeking around. See if I can solidify that a little bit more. I want a little bit darker. Let's try this. It's better. This is going to be a little darker than my glass right in there. I'm just kind of following it around. This way. that's better. It's a little more solid. A little more of an even surface. Okay, so my background here could use warming up a little bit. Let's see if this isn't too much. A little dark, but it's a little darker back there. Liking that. So to differentiate the back wall surface from this surface, this looks a little yellow, more yellow to me, and gets a little yellow in here. But let's bring this around a little bit. Okay, so where are we here? I'm gonna put a little more dark, something a little darker. Let's just reinforce that better. Bring that into here, up. I'm going to go lighter with some of those stems in there. And that it's kind of an orangey. This one here. Comes to a little point. Reinforce it a little bit on the dark side. And it's a little dark behind it. That wall kind of dips down. We get a dark back there. Comes up over here. And I want my horizon line a little higher than what's happening over here. This dips down. A little dark in there. The water line is still a little wonky. Not everything cooperates. Let's go up here. Carve it out a little bit in there. There. This dark in there. And where are we now? Comes across. A little dark. Right in there. Shadows. I don't want it to get too complicated. Over just a little bit. Nice little bit of orange in there. A little bit above the water line as well. Point right there. Come back in behind it. Okay. That. This. Put some of this. There's some real bright blue happening in the glass. And it comes down this way. And there's a little bit of that in there. And this is where I slow down with the glass. There's some yellowy right in here. It comes up this way, kind of a there. It loops around. It sort of butts up against. Light yellow, kind of the same, and coming up this way. Lighter right in there. My stems coming up here. Another stem right about there. And light area in there. A little bit of light happening over here. I'm going to reinforce the glass there. Better. There's a little blue in there. A little blue coming around here. Love this little blue happening. See, look at that. Go with it. Like that for this, actually. And a little bit up in coming down over here. A little busy in there, but we're gonna keep at it. I want this to be a little lighter. That. I'm going to go back and make these lighter. Let's put some of this is almost a little yellowy. Let's come in here, the little tips. There. And it dips off. And as it goes back in the distance, I'm not going to press as hard. Okay, that's better. A little bit of this happening in here. Just kind of some more finishing touches for some of these. And let's go in to this verbena and see if we can kind of solidify it a little bit. That's a little better. And it doesn't, I don't have to paint every little leaf. I'm just picking some of them out. Here, like that better. I'm just trying to pull it together. Never know how a painting's going to come out when I first start. That. I'm just kind of making my way around, checking things. I want to let's put this one. I'm going to put a little bit of light here. And there. Not quite light enough. Oh, so much for that pastel. That was probably a schminky. And here. Here. Be a little too soft a pastel for this. Not really nice bit of light right there. And there's a nice little bit of light reflecting off of that. Right in. You know, I'm whispering. My friend Warren tells me, don't whisper. Now I want to get some of my, I'm going to get some of the lighter reflections, and I'm not sure what happened over here. I probably smeared it a little bit. Let's put this here. Got that happening there. Not loving this straight line, so we're going to knock it down just a little bit. There. Give it a little bit of water line coming through there, and a little of the water line here, just to indicate where that is. And then I'm going to put some dark there. I want to see where what my water line is. There, darker. That. Okay. Kind of reinforcing things a little bit. Okay. And underneath here, coming down. Here. Take that down slightly, and it's a little darker. There. A little harsh right here. And let's get some reflections happening over here. And then some light in the glass. So, what do we have? A little whitish green. Let's see if this is light enough. Coming right off of there. There. A little bit Maybe we'll make this a little. Okay. Let's go with maybe one more. Looks like there's a little. Down to here. Okay, we're going to go with that, and I'm putting some highlights in the glass, and we'll call it little. And this is my Schminke soft pastel. This one is not quite white. It's a little yellowy. Right there, there's two of them, and then up in here, coming down this way. Another one over there, and the yellow one also. Dot right there. And not to break them. A little dot right in there. Okay, I like that. Maybe a teeny little bit of blue. You know, there's blue highlights here. This is really nice. And there's maybe a little in there. We'll do something a little darker. Some highlight happening in. I've already got some of it in there. And this is really blue. And we'll bring a little bit down in there. And a little. And here, you know, I'm slowing down. I'm just kind of being really gentle with the pastel. Right in there. Okay, so we're going to wind it up there. And I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope this has been helpful. I want to thank the Pastel Society of America, our president, Jimmy Wright, who's also this year's Hall of Fame honoree for our annual exhibition, Enduring Brilliance. And I want to thank board members Corey Pitkin and Susan Story. I couldn't have done it without you guys. I hope that you go out and try some florals in pastel, try the shadow box, the light. It's really a lot of fun. So thank you again.